Buenas tardes, buena tarde. Erev Tov. Yo soy Jonas Benarrock, soy portavoz de JCall Barcelona y tenemos el honor de presentar a Rabbis for Human Rights, que es una actividad que nos apetecía muchísimo y ha costado lo suyo organizarlo y esperemos que vaya a salir muy bien. Tenemos la presencia de Nava Hefetz y de Rabbi Moshe Yehudai, Rabina Nava Hefetz y Rabbi Moshe Yehudai, que son miembros de Rabbis for Human Rights, y tenemos al rabino Stephen Berkovitz de la comunidad Masorti de Barcelona, que hará de moderador del evento. Antes de empezar, me gustaría explicar brevemente qué es JCall Barcelona. Y bueno, JCall Barcelona parte de JCall Europe, que es una asociación de judíos europeos que se juntaron en 2010 para presionar sobre la idea de una solución al conflicto israelo-palestino en base a los dos estados para dos pueblos. JCall Barcelona seguimos en esta idea de que hay que buscar una solución política para el conflicto con los palestinos y creamos esta asociación, un grupo de judíos y judíos de la ciudad hace 4 años, en 2018, y tenemos un triple objetivo. El primer objetivo es abordar el conflicto Israel-Palestina desde perspectivas progresistas, o sea, dar a conocer los muchos movimientos, muchas agrupaciones que hay en Israel, de israelíes, de palestinos, mixtos y separados, que trabajan, que activan conjuntamente para buscar una solución al conflicto. Lo que pretendemos de algún modo es cubrir un vacío mediático que apenas se habla de ellos. O sea, los medios no les prestan atención, entonces nosotros estamos aquí un poco para cubrir ese vacío y por ese motivo estamos ahora con Rabbis for Human Rights. El segundo objetivo es luchar contra el antisemitismo. Estamos en un momento histórico complejo de reconfiguración política e ideológica del antisemitismo. La extrema derecha usa a los judíos para blanquear su racismo y al mismo tiempo usa a Israel para justificar su islamofobia. La extrema izquierda está obsesionada con Israel y los conspiranoicos de toda la vida siguen pensando que los judíos dominamos el mundo. Bueno, somos conscientes de la dificultad de adoptar una definición de antisemitismo independiente de intereses políticos no partidistas y por eso creemos que hay que hacer un debate en ese sentido. Y también somos muy conscientes de que el mal uso de la palabra antisemitismo, de la acusación de antisemitismo, lo que hace es enturbiar la lucha contra el verdadero antisemitismo. Entonces, solo me queda decir para acabar con la presentación de JCall que somos independientes de las comunidades judías de España, somos independientes de la Federación de Comunidades Judías de España, no tenemos vínculos con ningún partido político de ámbito catalán, español ni israelí, y que no apoyamos el BDS. Y bueno, paso la palabra a mi compañera de JCall, Margot, para que prosiga con esto.
Gracias, Jonas. Buenas tardes a todos. Voy a leer el texto que hemos preparado. Actualmente existen en Israel alrededor de 14 agrupaciones dedicadas a los derechos humanos. Rabbis for Human Rights es una organización israelí que pone en valor la tradición judía de derechos humanos y justicia social. Es así como está muy comprometida con problemas como la pobreza, la inseguridad alimentaria y asume la causa de todo tipo de personas invisibles y sin voz en la sociedad israelí. Un poco de historia. Nos dice que Rabbis for Human Rights fue fundada en 1988 por un grupo de rabinos reformistas, conservadores y ortodoxos, liderados por el rabino David Foreman. Es así como a finales de la década de los 80, durante los difíciles días de la primera intifada palestina y como respuesta a las violaciones de los derechos humanos en los territorios ocupados de Cisjordania, el rabino Foreman escribió una carta abierta dirigida a los grandes rabinos de Israel en la que preguntaba por qué la institución religiosa se enfocaba casi exclusivamente en la observancia del Shabbat y la Kashrut. A pesar de lo importante que son estos asuntos, el rabino Forman cuestiona cuál era la postura de los rabinos con respecto a las urgentes cuestiones morales del momento. Es así como 34 años más tarde, en este febrero pasado, Rabbis for Human Rights se presenta en una audiencia especial del Comité de Leyes y Constitución de la Knesset, presidida por el rabino Gilad Karib, donde exige la urgente actuación de este comité, del gobierno y de las fuerzas de orden, para declarar a las milicias de colonos como organizaciones terroristas y a las personas perjudicadas por su violencia como víctimas del terror. Esta audiencia fue convocada a raíz del brutal ataque perpetrado a activistas y agricultores palestinos durante la cosecha de olivas en Burín en este enero que recién pasó. Rabbis for Human Rights levanta una voz rabínica de la conciencia judía sobre la necesidad de una solución política a la luz de los problemas tan complejos como las políticas excluyentes del Estado de Israel hacia los ciudadanos no judíos, la injusticia perpetrada sobre el pueblo palestino, expropiaciones y asentamientos ilegales, muro de separación, controles del agua, así como el aumento de actos de violencia por parte de los colonos, y que finalmente son un peligro y un riesgo mayor para la sociedad israelí. Todo lo dicho supone un desafío moral y político enorme al cual JCall Barcelona se suma. Le doy la palabra entonces con estas palabras a Rabbi Stephen Berkowitz. Gracias.
Shalom a todos, Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov. Muchas gracias, Jonas, Margot. Our program this evening was planned long before Russia's brutal invasion of the Ukraine, a country we know that has been committed to democracy, liberty, freedom, and peace. All of us, wherever we are living, are shocked and saddened by this unjustified and unprovoked war of aggression, which represents an attack on democracy itself. Therefore, at this moment, as we begin our program, our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of the Ukraine, who this evening are hiding in shelters, fleeing for their lives, seeking refuge, and most importantly, resisting with bravery and courage. With your permission, I would like to read the following prayer for peace attributed to Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. We recall that Reb Nachman was the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, that he was born in Mezerich, Ukraine, and he died in Uman, Ukraine. May it be your will, Adonai, our God, and God of our ancestors, to put an end to war and bloodshed on this earth, and to spread a great and wonderful peace over the whole world, so that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. May all inhabitants of this planet come to recognize and know the ultimate truth. We did not come to this world for conflict, for strife, nor for hatred, envy, mockery, or bloodshed. We came to this world only to know you. May you be blessed for all eternity. Therefore, have mercy upon us and fulfill for us what is written in the Torah. And I will grant peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. I will drive the wild beasts from the land, and neither shall the sword go through your country. May it be your will, and let us say Amen. And now to our program. In just over 2 months, we will be celebrating on May the 5th, Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's 74th birthday. Each year on Israel's Independence Day, we take stock of her many accomplishments, but also of her shortcomings. We also remind ourselves that Israel was created not only for the Jewish people to attain their deserved and legitimate national sovereignty, nor was she established only to be a refuge for Jews fleeing danger, which is the role she is assuming today. Israel was also born into existence so that the cherished teachings of our Torah tradition grow and flourish, and especially be put into practice. I am thinking of such teachings as B'Tselem Elokim, that every human being was created in God's image. The obligation of aligning justice with law, tzedakah and mishpat. The requirement to pursue peace, rodef shalom, and the injunction to protect the stranger. For as the Torah tells us and reminds us, we too were strangers in Egypt. Ki ger hayita b'Mitzrayim. Hence the title of our discussion this evening with our two distinguished guests, my fellow colleagues, rabbis from Israel, rabbis for human rights. What is the Jewish character that must be preserved in the state of Israel? Each one of our speakers will be allotted approximately 25 minutes. And after the two presentations, we will then listen to you, participants. You can, through the interventions, you can submit a question in the chat, or afterwards press the special button with the yellow hand, raise a hand, and we will open the microphone so that we can listen to you. But the questions will be taken after the two presentations. And so, c'est avec grand plaisir. It's with great pleasure that I introduce one of our first speakers, Rabbi Nava Hefetz, who is currently the educational director of Rabbis for Human Rights. She has created and administered dozens of programs dealing with human rights in Israel, the West Bank, and abroad. She also supervises rabbis who are working in the field across Israel in areas of social justice as it pertains to foreign immigrants, refugees, gender, and the Palestinians. Rabbi Hefetz received her BA in French linguistics, French literature, and philosophy from Tel Aviv University, and her Master of Arts in Education and Jewish Studies from the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. Prior to her rabbinical studies, she worked for many years as an educator for the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv and for the Melitz Center for Jewish Zionist Education. In addition, she served as program director and acting director of the Bronfman Center for Mifgashim, which promoted intercultural encounters between Israelis and their peers in the diaspora. Rabbi Nava was ordained by Hebrew Union College in 2006 and has served Kehilot congregations in South Africa and in Shanghai, China. an indefatigable human rights activist. She has also worked for the past 10 years with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And this experience led her to create, with two other female rabbis in Israel, Miklat Yisrael, which assists African asylum seekers. Bechavod, bevakasha, Rabbi Nava.
Thank you very much. I'm almost closing 20 years in Rabbis for Human Rights, but since I was a student at Tel Aviv University, I was already involved in many activities in the framework of Peace Now, of Shalom Achshav. And actually, I grew up in Israel. I was born in Israel, but the turning point in my conscience to see the Palestinians, to see the others in the Israeli society was after the 73 war, when I was a soldier at the IDF, in a unit that used to receive names of fallen soldiers, wounded soldiers, and soldiers who disappeared. And this was really a trauma that brought me to ask myself whether it is really that we don't have a partner on the other side. And this is how my journey started until it ended at Rabbis for Human Rights. It's a long journey, crossing borders and oceans and continent, until I finally found my real vocation. When I started working in Rabbis for Human Rights, the own concept of human rights was not in the agenda of the Israeli society. It is much more today, 20 years later, but we have another big road to take until we will be able to say that the Israeli society is really dealing with human rights, whether it is for the Palestinians or inside Israel, for the Bedouin citizen of Israel, the Arab citizen of Israel, the asylum seekers. I mean, we have a long journey to continue in order to have a better society. So when I started working for Rabbis for Human Rights, I immediately understand that in order to make a change in the Israeli society, to raise awareness about the Palestinian situation, the Palestinian population living in the West Bank, I need to change mentalities. And that's why I went to work with two kinds of population, the pre-military academies, because I knew that within a year they will be drafted into the IDF, and they will be confronted with civilians in the West Bank, and the students, because the students are already in all kinds of ministries in Israel. And also the pre-military academies are the elite of the Israeli society, and they are the future leaders of Israel. So I understood that if I take them a year before the army, I will be able to at least encourage them to think and to ask questions about various topics in the Israeli society. So let me tell you a little bit about two big projects that we have in the West Bank and that have a tremendous impact on us, on the Palestinians. And let me tell you from the beginning, 99% of the Israeli society have no idea what is going on in the West Bank. They hear from the television, from times to times, from the media, but they have no idea the acts that we're committing among the Palestinian population, the civilians in the West Bank. What I discovered throughout the years that I'm working with Rabbis for Human Rights is that violence is only increasing from year to year. Because in the beginning, we had the second intifada, which was really a terrible intifada with clans. It was an armed intifada. We didn't know where the next bomb is going to explode in Israel. And this was because of this situation. It was very easy for the settlers in the West Bank to expand and build the settlements, because we were occupied. We were busy dealing with bombs that were exploding everywhere inside Israel. And this is where we started our first project, which is the olive harvest. In the West Bank, there are dozens of settlements, Jewish settlements, but near the settlements, because the settlers cannot expand their territory, so they help building outposts with youth, 14, 16, 17 years youth that dropped from school, from their family, and they are going to find themselves. You know, these years are the year where you are looking for your identity. These young people are motivated by fundamentalistic rabbis that are living in the not in all the settlements, but in some settlements, and they encourage these delinquent youth to harass the Palestinian farmers. Most of the settlements are up on the hills, and below you have the Palestinian villages. And sometimes, as you know, or maybe you don't know, all the West Bank is divided into three main areas: Area A, B, and C. Area B and Area C are under Israeli military control. Only Area A is under military and civil Palestinian control, but all the rest is under Israeli control, military control. So when a farmer, a Palestinian farmer, want to have access to his land, he's near a settlement. And in the name of security, they chase him, they take him out of his land. So what we started to establish during the second intifada from 2001 to, we started to bring volunteers to come and serve as human shields for the farmers, the Palestinian farmers, and we are helping them picking the olives. Usually there is a lot of violence between the settlers, these young people that are coming down the hills. They set fire to olive groves, or they attack the farmers. They attack us, and you will hear from Rabbi Moshe Yehudai in a few minutes. He's one of our rabbis that 2.5 years ago was attacked. They open his head, they break his arm with an iron stick, okay? And this last January, we had three attacks on our volunteers. This last December and January, where only our volunteers, which mean Jewish volunteers, were attacked. One is a colonel in the Israeli IDF, a reserve colonel, but a colonel, and they broke his arm, they opened his head, and they set fire to a car. I mean, these are really delinquent people, young people, that nobody arrests them. I mean, there are, you know, on Rosh Hashanah this year, I got numbers. I got a whole paper that was diffused, was spread by the settlers, this young outpost, and they claim they're very proud. Okay, we uprooted 2,892 olive trees. We attacked in 46 villages. 94 cars were demolished, were destroyed. I mean, and this is not things that I'm saying. This is the settlers themselves that are very proud that they managed to do such a damage to the Palestinian farmers. Now, the Israeli army is the sovereign in the West Bank. But there was not one arrest of one Jew during the last years. The only Jews that were arrested were those who burned a whole family in the village of Morer, the Wapshe family. The only one that were arrested, that were judged, and they are in jail. 99%, I can assure you, you can check, 99% of the complaints are closed by the army and by the police, and no one was arrested. The case of Rabbi Yehudai, it's 2.5 years. No one was arrested. The insurance company don't want to give him compensation, not our insurance company, not the state company. So we're dealing right now with a Jewish terror, a Jewish terrorist that occurred in the West, in the West Bank. There is also Palestinian terrorism, but the army they know how to deal with this kind of terrorism. But the Jewish terrorism, no one is dealing with. And these outposts that are, you know, a few caravans on a hill, and in a few hills, because there are 145 outposts according to registration of Peace Now, because they are doing this kind of data. 145 outposts. No one was arrested. No one. Now, if we're not there helping the farmers, they don't have access to the land. Did you ever hear that when you own a land, a piece of land, that you need to get a permission from the army to have access to this land, which is a private land? Well, this is what is happening in the West Bank. The Palestinians, in order to harvest their olive groves, the land, they need a special permission from the IDF in order to have access to the land. And the Attorney General of the army, it's against the rules of the army itself. Because the Attorney General of the army claimed that you shouldn't prevent a Palestinian to have access to his land. And when there is a conflict, when there is violence between Israelis and Palestinians, you should first of all deal with the Jews and kick them out of the land. But it's easier to come to the Palestinian, he's a minority, and you say, go home, come tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow, no one will attack you. So the army, in a way, is cooperating with the settlers. Police stations, you know that there are no police stations in the West Bank, only in the settlements. And a Palestinian cannot go cannot go to a settlement in order to make a complaint, because they will arrest him immediately at the entrance. They will think, oh, he is a terrorist that is coming to put a bomb or to attack someone. So the situation is really very complicated. Once we're finished with the harvest, there is a huge damage to the trees. The settlers are also stealing. They're stealing olives from the olive groves of the Palestinian farmers. And even though, according to the Jewish law, to the halakha, it is forbidden, gezel goy, to steal from a non-Jew is a sin. It is forbidden. To uproot a tree, it is forbidden according to the Jewish law, because it's bal tashchit. You shall not destroy it's God's, not mine, yes, it's God's, God permitted this action, the tree to come into being. So, but they go outside on Shabbat, and they're all, with a payas up to your knees and big kippah. They go out on Shabbat from the synagogue. They throw stones. They set fire on. They take a tire, of a car. They set fire and they throw it into the olive grove. I'm not dealing with whether we need these settlements or not. I'm not entering the political issue. I'm dealing only with human rights. And it is against the Jewish tradition. What we're doing, our behavior in the West Bank is against the Jewish tradition. And the army is part of it. And the police is part of it. And this is what we are fighting. We are not fighting Israel. We are Zionists.
Hamas is a terrorist movement. I'm sorry. Hamas is a terrorist movement. Don't forget this. Hamas is killing their own citizens. Thank you. I'm sorry. I can't stand this. Bye-bye.
I didn't talk about the Palestinian issue. I'm talking about what we are doing. We're responsible because the sovereignty of this land is under Israeli responsibility. Of course, Hamas is a terrorist organization group, of course, and Israel is fighting Hamas, and we're against Hamas. But I'm not talking about this part. I'm talking about my responsibility as a sovereign. After a war, I'm the sovereign on this land right now until there will be an agreement. So as long as I'm responsible about the people that are living there, the indigenous people. This is according to the Geneva Convention. It's according to the Israeli law. So I'm not against Israel. I'm against BDS. I think it's a stupid idea of creating this BDS because it's not working, because some of the settlers are making deals with the Palestinians, and you are getting merchandise from the settlements that you even don't know that they are coming from the settlements because of this cooperation with the Palestinian Authority. So I'm not against Israel. And of course, Hamas is a terrorist organization, but we have our own Jewish terrorists in the West Bank. And you have to understand it. When we are coming to plant trees in places that trees were uprooted, okay, they attack us. We're not doing something against Israel. We're doing a humanitarian action. So it's really militias that are the last attack on our volunteer. You saw that it was a planned attack. They came, they knew exactly where to come. They came with with iron sticks. They came with gasoline. They set fire to an Israeli car. And what we were doing, we were planting trees. We were not near these outposts. So, and the last thing that I want to tell you is that these young people are receiving their kashrut from rabbis, and we know these rabbis, and these are the same rabbis that gave the kashrut to murder Yitzhak Rabin, and these are the same rabbis that tried Torat HaMelech, and it's the same rabbis are praising Baruch Goldstein, who murdered 29 people that were praying in Me'arat HaMachpelah, in the patriarch, in the cave of our patriarchs and matriarchs. So there is a whole strategy of the settlers. Oh, now the settlements, they are kosher, but the outposts are illegal. Everything is illegal. Every single settlement is illegal according to the international law, according to the Geneva Convention, that Israel is one of the countries that signed the Geneva Convention, okay? And according to Israeli law, the West Bank was not annexed to Israel. It is called a military zone, a land under military control. So it's not part of Israel. The Israeli law is not applied there. But we have more and more and more settlement, and we will arrive in a few years, maybe 5-10 years, situation where the two-state solution will not be possible. And this is the end of the Jewish state. It's the end of Israel. From the Mediterranean to the Jordan, we will have almost 6 million Palestinians. So those who claim that Israel is not in danger, they don't know what they are saying. So I'm very upset that this person maybe didn't understand me well, but I believe like Rabbi Heschel, Abraham Yeshua Heschel, who said that few are guilty, but we are all responsible. And this is how I feel. And what we are doing because it goes against the Jewish ethics, against the Jewish tradition. And this is not a Jewish behavior, what we are doing. And the things that they're doing in my name, and they are doing in your name as Jews, okay? So I'm taking full responsibility to work in order to abolish this violation of rights of human beings, of children, of women, of men that are not involved in terrorism. They are not part of Hamas, and they are not part of jihad. They are people, normal people, who want to live, to bring the bread on the table for the children. They want to be able to work, and that's it. They want to live in peace. And this is the majority, okay? And what the media is trying to do is to depict everyone as terrorists. No, there are, terrorists in the West Bank. But the IDF, they know exactly where they are and where to get them. So I will let maybe my colleague.
Toda Rabba. Thank you very much, Rabbi Nava, for your presentation. And I believe that Jonas would like to show a video before I introduce our next speaker, Rabbi Moshe. Jonas?
In footage shot in the last week, shared by an Israeli human rights group, they're shown descending through olive groves, attacking Palestinian farmers. Extremist Israeli settlers that come each year, locals say, to disrupt the Palestinian harvest. Every year, Rabbi Moshe Yehudai volunteers as a human shield for the farmers, but this year his faith offered no protection.
They knew that I'm Jewish, and they knew that I'm helping these Palestinians. So for them, nothing can be worse than that.
Why is that?
Because they see the Palestinians as their enemies.
The rabbi says masked men surrounded him, beat him with an iron rod, and fractured his arm. I'm 80 years old. I told them to leave me alone, he cries. My arm hurts so much. So it's really striking to me how close these settlements and settlement outposts are to the Palestinian villages. We're heading up to Yitzhar, where they seldom let outsiders in. In this settlement, there is little remorse. It's a pity. We reject violence. It's a pity that they hurt him, says Tzvi Sukkot. But that rabbi has a complex of self-hatred. They come to help the people, the Palestinians, who are trying to kill us. The Hilltop youth have harassed Palestinian farmers for years, even burning down their groves. When they recently attacked Israeli military and a senior officer, it was a step too far, drawing condemnation from settlers like Sukkot, who called it an outrage, and even Israel's prime minister. An Israeli commander locked down these areas to try and maintain the peace. The Israeli military has condemned this kind of violence. Do you take them seriously in that condemnation?
Today, unfortunately, if you're an Israeli citizen and you violate the rights of Palestinians, then it will take a miracle that something that you will be prosecuted and something that you'll be indicted and something will happen to you.
Hi. But now, Palestinian farmers like Muhsen al-Shami and his sister must sneak into the closed military zones, hiding behind their own trees just to finish the harvest. We are surrounded by settlements, he says. Left and right you see settlements. You will see soldiers. When the settlers rip down branches like this, he says, it feels like they are ripping out the arms of his child. David Mackenzie, CNN West Bank.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Rabbi Moshe Yehudai, who graduated from Ben Gurion University with a BA in Jewish History and Social Sciences, and also a Bachelor of Music. And he was ordained as rabbi at Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem in 1983. And he received Master of Arts cum laude at the Hebrew University. And over the years, he served congregations in Israel, in Sydney, Australia, Newcastle, England, and various communities in Central Europe, most notably the Czech Republic. He's very active in a number of interfaith organizations and has volunteered in various human rights organizations, including Physicians for Human Rights. And he was one of the founding members of Rabbi for Human Rights. And you've just seen a video of an attack against him in October of 2019. He was age 80, attacked by Jewish settlers. And you know the context. And Rabbi Yehudai is married, has 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Bechavod, vakasha.
Thank you very much. As you see, I'm dressed now a little bit different than I was dressed when I was hurt. The reason is that I'm now in the middle of a ceremony in an Orthodox synagogue in Tel Aviv ceremony for the introducing of a new scroll, new Sefer Torah, which was donated by one of our great donors to human rights. She also donated a scroll to her synagogue in Tel Aviv. So I am participating now in the ceremony. So this is the reason for the change, for the difference in dressing. But to the matter of fact, Nava described very accurately the history and the situation in the West Bank. I don't have to add anything, only few words, only personal words. So as you said, Jonas, I was one of the founders of Rabbis for Human Rights. And the reason that I'm very sensitive to this matter is that I am in my viewpoint is pacifism. I'm a conscientious objector. I refused to serve in the Israeli army. Although I was born in Jerusalem, of course, Israeli citizen, I had to, but I refused. The reason is, like, as I said, for me, sanctity of human life. Every human life, doesn't matter the background, is holy, holier than anything else. So instead of service in the Israeli army, I served 4 years as a teacher in a remote Israeli town in the desert of Negev. Then as I said, you said, I was ordained and served communities all over the world. Now, a few words about what happened to me. As you saw and you heard, I was injured in October 19, Sukkot, 2.5 years ago, and you had the full description of what happened to me. I want to say a few words about what happened later. I thought that I deserve any compensation for that. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it because the Israeli law is that if Palestinian harm Jew, the incident is recognized as terrorist act. Even if a Israeli Jew harm, kill, or injure Palestinians, it's recognized as a terrorist act. But in my case, I was hurt by Jews. And fortunately, I'm a Jew as well. So I couldn't get, I wasn't recognized by the defense ministry and by the national insurance in Israel. But I continue to act. I'm 82 now. I cannot be active as I was before, but I try to go every year at least once or twice to help in the olive picking in the West Bank together with my friends. Nava, Hefetz, my dear friend, is one of the best. And I hope that with your help of people all over the world, and any kind of assistance, we will continue to act, because we are the only organization which includes rabbis for all streams of Judaism, Orthodox, Reconstructionist, Reform, and Conservative, and even secular rabbis, if I understand exactly what it is, what unites us all is the deep recognition that in the Jewish ethics, the first law of Jewish ethics is we all were created in God image. We all, Jews, Arabs, everyone, women, men, everyone. And unfortunately, as Nava described so well, there are so many infliction of human rights, basic human rights in the West Bank, in the conquered West Bank, that we cannot sit alone. We must do whatever we can in order to improve the situation. We have some successes, I hope for more. And in these words, I must conclude my contribution to this evening. Thank you so much, and God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
תודה רבה, יישר כוח, רבי
בבקשה,
משה.
תודה. שלום, שלום.
Shalom.
So we have received already a few questions in the chat, and we will start with those questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand like this, or you can press. There's a special feature, right, to react with the raising of a hand. So Nava, Rabbi Nava will be responding. Question from Phyllis Schoenberg. Do you believe that a two-state solution is still possible at this point? I know that you already referred to that, Rabbi Nava, saying that in a few years' time, it might no longer be possible. But right now in 2022, with all the changing developments in our world today, the war in the Ukraine, what is your thoughts today on the two-state solution? Bakasha.
I'm for it, but unfortunately, when I drive from the north of the West Bank to Hebron, I see the reality. And the reality is such that there's a huge building, roads, and expanding the settlements. It's possible, it's still possible maybe today, but it won't be tomorrow. All along Road 60 is the road that is crossing the West Bank. You see huge panel, huge advertising. Come and build your house in the West Bank. And I see the building. I see the new neighborhoods inside the settlements that are being built. I think that if we don't stop it now, we're heading towards one state. I mean, they will annex the West Bank, because the situation cannot continue like this. At a certain point, it will explode. A lot of Palestinians, those who can afford it, are leaving, and are leaving for South America, and are leaving for Europe, and for the States, and those who will remain in the West Bank are the poor people. So right now, I think it's still possible. Once it won't be possible anymore, because listen, 10 years ago, there were 250,000 Jews in the West Bank. Today, there are over 600,000. We're talking about 3 million Palestinians. Between 2.5, 3 million Palestinians. I'm talking only about the West Bank. I'm not talking about Gaza. Gaza is another story. And when people are talking about apartheid, they don't understand the meaning of apartheid. Today, there is no apartheid. There is occupation, which is different. But once Israel will annex the territories, then you will be able to talk about apartheid, because they will not give the Palestinians the Israeli citizenship, because then the demographic balance will be completely different. And then once they're not citizens, I mean, you annex a territory, but you don't give citizenship to the people, then you will be able to talk about apartheid. Right now, we're talking about occupation, and it's not a very difficult occupation, but it's violating the rights of people. People cannot move freely everywhere. When you drive along Road 60, the names of the Palestinian villages are not mentioned, only the Jewish settlements. It's like they are present, absent, because you see the villages, but there is no name to the village. Only when you come to Ramallah, Shechem, Nablus, Jenin, then you can see the sign. But all the villages along the road, they're not existing. They are transparent. So the two-state solution, and right now, you know, with the COVID for 2 years, no one was talking. No one was dialoguing. Okay? I was invited to a peace conference last Friday to talk about the violence of the settlers and of our work. And there were 4 representatives of the Palestinian Authority. But the Israeli government is talking in terms of economy, not of nationality. Okay? And they think that economy will solve all the problem. But you know, in 1987, when the first Intifada exploded into our face, it was the best time, the best economic time for the Palestinians. So economy will not solve the conflict. And there's something else that I think that in Europe and in America, people don't understand, that a serious base of this conflict is a religious base and not a political. Of course, it's about land. But why land? Because it's a religious conflict. Because when you hear the settlers, they claim God promised us this land. It's ours. It's true. I mean, what, as a religious person, when I read the Bible, yeah, I mean, I read to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So does it mean that it should be now? Maybe God is telling us this is, you cannot, because there's another people there. But the base of one of the base of this conflict is a religious base. Often I'm doing a lot of interfaith dialogue, and sometimes I ask my Christian colleagues, how do you explain the fact that you believe in the Bible, in the Torah, okay? You believe in the Torah and in the New Testament. How do you give an interpretation to this kind of discourse? I mean, it's in the Torah, it's written. So, and you believe in the Torah, I mean, you believe in the Old Testament. So I developed a whole theology that is trying to explain why it's true, this land was promised to us, but why we cannot be there now. We have to come to a compromise like Abraham with his nephew, because it's a family conflict. The Palestinians are part of my family and your family. We are family. So it's a conflict inside the family. And I always say to the settlers, because I dialogue with the settlers and not with the fundamentalistic, the messianic, we don't have a same base for discussion. But I said to them, listen, look at Abraham and Lot. They shared, they divided the land. So why can't you do it? Mm-hmm. I would like to be a disciple of Abraham, of Aaron, and not of fundamentalistic leaders.
Toda. Another question in the chat before we go to the persons who have raised their hand. Another question is from Judith Berlowitz. How does US military aid to Israel affect human rights?
U.S. military?
Yes, U.S. military aid to Israel. I imagine that someone else in the chat, Sharon Perez, added that it's obviously a complex question, but we know that now I'm speaking as an American. We know that some of the young leaders in the Democratic Party, including an older leader, Bernie Sanders, have discussed the question of whether Congress should condition the U.S. military aid on how Israel will advance the cause of peace and discuss with the Palestinians. What does Rabbis for Human Rights, Rabbi Nava, have any particular position paper on this question, which of course is being debated very much so in the United States, and as you know, the young American Jewish community, the millennials, who have a whole different perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian question and their relationship with Judaism and Israel. So how would you respond to that question on U.S. military aid and human rights in Israel, in the West Bank?
I think this is a question that you can ask about any other country, state in the world. Because today Israel is not only buying. Today Israel is one of the major country that is selling guns and weapons to other states. So I don't think that if America tomorrow will stop helping Israel or selling them F-35 or this will change something. Israel became a startup nation. And today, a lot of the wars are through computers, through cyber. So of course you need planes and you need, but Israel developed tanks. They sell tanks. So I don't think that this is an issue that will prevent Israel from or will stop the conflict. This is really, I don't think that this is the issue. I think that if there was an international organization of all the European Union, the USA government that will put pressure on Israel, because Obama didn't really do it. Okay, he was in a way he was coward. Okay, he didn't want to really bump into Netanyahu. He was not really serious about it. Okay, and you have to understand that America and the European Union, they have interest in the West Bank. So and war, there is an economy of war, and this is right now the situation. I mean, there are a lot of beneficiaries to this situation, and the Americans are one of the beneficiaries. So I don't think that if tomorrow they will stop selling weapons to Israel, something will. This is what will stop the conflict. The conflict there must be a pressure, and when the international community want to put a pressure on a state, on a country, they know how to do it. And we saw it in Kosovo, and we saw it in Yugoslavia, okay? But they don't want to do it here. So, and you have to understand there's also a guilt from the Europeans, and there are Germany and France, and so there is a guilt because of the Holocaust. And Israel, they know exactly how to manipulate the Holocaust for political means.
Thank you. Other people were responding to in the chat, making distinction between aid that is just monetary aid, then there are, of course, credits. It's very complicated. It's 3.8 billion, but we were speaking mostly about military aid, but in general, the aid that Israel receives, there's also donations by American Jewish community. Would that be conditional or not? I would like us to go to people who have raised their hands, who are present, and por favor, Mori Azaguri, puedes abrir el micrófono.
Sharon estaba primero.
I saw Mori first.
Oh.
But
I'll say,
it's
you want
okay.
Sharon, Maury, you go first. Maury, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, I'll couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Nava for the fantastic work she's doing, and for coming and explaining to us what is the real situation. I also have to apologize for the interruption you had during your presentation. I feel terrible that you had to feel in that big silence that we were having to listen to you. The only voice that came out was to criticize your work, which is wonderful. So thank you for the work. Thank you for coming and explaining to us, because it's enlightening. My question was, first of all, to understand the legislative situation in those territories. I don't understand why, when an Israeli is aggressed, he cannot get justice. I understand they could be biased about Palestinians. I don't accept it, but what you're saying is that an Israeli is being aggressed, and even he's an Israeli, he cannot get justice. He cannot go to the police and say, look, this other Jew aggressed me, and I want to take him to court. I want to denounce this. I mean, here there are a simpler situation, because it's not Arabs against Jews, it's Jews against Jews. I mean, what happened when you have a traffic accident? You get justice. So what's happening in those territories that is hindering the action of justice? Is it that these territories have a different set of legislation, judges and police, or is it Israeli police and judges? Can you explain a little bit more about that and why it's not working?
Wow, it's a wonderful question. There is justice when a settler is attacked. Immediately, they find immediately the killer or the person who wounded another Israeli. It's for settlers. What they claim is that when we are coming sometimes, we are in Area B. Now, Area B is under military Israeli control. So why can't, so, and this is something that we are challenging right now, the Supreme Court, because we made an appeal to the court, and the court said, no, you were in Area B, but Area B is under military Israeli control. Now, Rabbi Moshe Yehudai, what we found out, that it was not Area B, it was Area C. And Area C is totally under Israeli control, civilly and military, okay? The other thing is that the youth from the outposts that are coming to attack, they are completely, you cannot identify them. So even if we want to complain to the police, we go to the police. They cannot arrest. I mean, it's not really they cannot arrest, because the Israeli security, the Shabak, they know exactly who is these young people, and they have their people inside that are giving them information, okay? But they don't want to deal with it because of political reasons. Today we have a government which personally I think that we should give them a chance, okay? Because it's finally, we have Arabs and we have right wing and we have left wing and we have center, okay? And we should give them, you know, a chance to do the work, okay? But even though they're not doing exactly their work. 2 weeks ago, I was in the Knesset dealing with this issue with Rabbi Gilad Kariv. It's the second time. And he asked the police and the army, please, I want to have information. How many Jews were arrested? How many Palestinians were arrested? The army didn't give them to the member of the Knesset. So he sent them again and he said, I want to know exactly, because once a Jew attacks another Jew, first of all, it's not something that happened, you know, like between the Palestinians and the settlers, okay? It's something that the escalation was the last 4 years. And we didn't complain, okay? There was in the media, but this year, we went to complain to the police and to the army. And that's why the Knesset started investigating, and we hope that something will change. But definitely there's a law for the settlers, there's a law for the Palestinians, and there is a law for people like us. But
okay, thank you very much.
Toda, Rabbi Nava. And now, Sharon, please, your turn to ask a question, and then we'll have maybe one more question that's in the chat concerning BDS. But Sharon, your question first.
I actually, what I had was not actually a question. When Nava Hefetz, you said that, you know, you told the group here that a lot of Palestinians who have enough money are leaving, and that's of course true for Australia, for Canada, wherever they can go. I wanted to tell the people, I'm from Israel now. I live now in Israel many years, and people overseas should be aware that also Israelis are leaving. Jewish Israelis who can get out are leaving our country, and for many reasons, but one of the reasons I think is because of what we call the conflict, the ongoing conflict. And that's why, you know, I'm with another organization, Women Wage Peace, but we're also trying to help because we're also losing Jewish Israeli people, not just Palestinian people. That's what I wanted to say. But thank you very much, Rabbis for Human Rights. You're doing incredible work, and I helped with the olive picking, and I hope to help again, you know, next year. Bye.
Kol hakavod, Sharon. Thank you very much for your testimony. Yes, we mentioned BDS, and you know, we should stress the fact, and we've spoken already with Jonas and Margot and you, Rabbi Nava, that in some ways American Jews have the luxury to be more involved in this human rights issue on Israel, the Palestinians, the West Bank, the occupation, the settlers, and there are even American Jews, young Jews who participate in BDS. So it's something that is occurring more and more in the States, and here in Europe, European Jews feel very much besieged. On the one hand, they're seeing many extreme left European political parties speak about BDS. Could you comment on the question from Judith Berlowitz on whether BDS is having an effect on the occupation?
Not at all. And not at all. And I'll tell you something that, first of all, most Americans that are pro-BDS, they brought a concept from South Africa, and they think that what was working in South Africa will work in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And it's not the case. And I'll give you one example, but I can bring much more, many more examples. In Jericho, the Palestinians built a factory to pack products from Palestinian factories, goods and products, olive oil, olives. It's okay. All kind of the settlers are bringing their merchandise. The Palestinian they pack the goods. They put a label made in Palestine and they ship it. Go figure in America or in Europe where this product came from. They're sure that it's from Palestine because it's written made in Palestine. And actually it's from a settlement. It's from Tekoa. It's the mushrooms of Tekoa. It's the wine of Har Bracha. And you don't know. So they bypass like this, the boycott. Okay? Now I wonder, all these very smart students at the colleges, do they use a discount key? Are they boycotting discount key? People that need a pacemaker for the heart, they are boycotting Israel? All the high tech, it's really what was right for the 60s. And in a geopolitical situation as South Africa is not working in this conflict. You need to find something else. And who are you boycotting? You are boycotting me? I'm working with the Palestinians. You live 4,000 miles away. I'm dealing every day with the Palestinians. I see the injustice. I'm trying to repair. And they're totally ignorant about the conflict. Totally ignorant. So I don't like the right wing in Europe or in America, and I don't like the left wing, because anti-Semitism is also in the left wing. And some of my best friends on the left side of the political arena are anti-Israel, but they are really, you can find anti-Semitism, but it's not nice for a leftist to say to claim I'm an anti-Semite. It's much more convenient to say I'm anti-Israel. Bon ton. It's a bon ton. Yes, it's the right way. So I'm very critical to the right and to the left, and also I'm critical about the Palestinian Authority. But as long as I'm the sovereign after a war, I'm occupying land, it's my responsibility.
I think we're coming to the end of our program, and your responses, Rabbi Nava, have been very, very helpful, very detailed, and you spoke with a lot of convincing words. And I see that Margot, ¿tú tienes una pregunta, Margot? Sería la última pregunta, y después Jonas will conclude our session for today. Toda rabba, Nava.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Rabbi Nava. Primero decir que igual la intervención de Isaac permitió también hacer varias aclarar y dar luz sobre muchos puntos importantes. Mi pregunta es, ¿cómo crees tú cuáles son los puntos, cómo nosotros desde la diáspora podemos aportar o contribuir para dar luz en estas situaciones, concretamente, en términos concretos? Muy gracias.
Thank you. It's very important because usually Jews in the diaspora, they don't know how they can contribute. But you are a very important part of the puzzle. And I think that without the Jews in the diaspora, something is missing in the puzzle, and the puzzle is not finished. So what can you do? First of all, you can you can come as a delegation and learn more in depth about the conflict so that you can become ambassadors of Rabbis for Human Rights in Spain or in other places. Okay? This is something that we're doing with, for example, communities in or organizations in America, in other groups in Europe. So first of all, you can come as a group and we will organize for you a week in order to learn. And once you will be, you will know the more in depth about, you will see the situation in real time. So you will be able to create groups in Spain where you can explain the conflict to other, and you can be our ambassadors. Okay, and this is something which is very important because we are speaking a Jewish language. I'm not doing it because like another organization of human rights. I'm doing it because I believe it's against the Jewish ethics. It's against the Jewish tradition that Jews cannot behave like we are behaving. So once you use this language, it's different to explain it to the non-Jewish environment, to other groups in Spain. And also it shows that not all the Israelis are settlers. I think that in Europe, the image of Israel is terrible because all you hear are about the settlers. You don't hear about people like me. And we are 150 rabbis from all denominations. We are the biggest rabbi organization in Israel. And we have rabbis from all denominations. We are the only rabbi organization in the world with where all the streams, the Jewish streams, are under one roof. That an Orthodox rabbi call me Rabbi Nava. This is not simple, but we manage to we are not radical, and that's. And you know, sometimes in order to explain something, in order to convince somebody, okay, you have to use the right words, the right sentences, in order to bring him to understand your position. So I think that the Jews in the diaspora, and I don't talk about galut. There is no more galut. There is gola, but not galut. Galut is when you don't have a national home. So now you're not in the galut, you are in the gola, you are in the diaspora, but not in the exile. You are not exiled anymore. You are free to move wherever you want to move. So come organize a group and come with us. I can tell you that last week I was in the Gaza Strip with a group of Muslim educators and European Union deputies, explaining them the situation, and which is it's even more difficult than the West Bank, because we have war every 2-3 years. Okay, and it was they at the end of the day, they told me, listen, you open our eyes. We never saw that there are other people on the other side of the wall, not only the Gaza. And of course, the situation is not symmetric. It's not symmetric. We have a state, we are a strong state, a strong army. And on the other side, you have people, you have Hamas, that is a terrorist organization. But you have people, you have children, youth, women. And it was very interesting for them. And they say, now we understand. When they were standing in the fields of the kibbutz Nirim, 2 kilometers from Khan Younes, they understood. So now, and these are Muslim educators from Belgium. Now, when they go back, they will talk differently. So this is what I want to suggest you to do. Come, learn, and then go back and be ambassadors.
תודה רבה, רבי נאווה, היה מצוין. Jonas, the concluding words, las últimas palabras.
Muy bien. A ver, bueno, yo he recogido algunas notas que me han impactado, que creo que son importantes, y las voy a transmitir. Son básicamente palabras de la Nava, y es que nos aseguraba que el 99% de la sociedad israelí no tiene ni idea de los actos que estamos cometiendo contra la población civil palestina. Otra idea también expresada, un poco escalofriante, es que rabinos integristas estimulan los ataques a los palestinos. Los mismos colonos están muy orgullosos de esos ataques a agricultores palestinos y ninguno de ellos ha sido detenido. Estos rabinos son los mismos que bendicen con una especie de certificado de kashrut estos ataques, y son los mismos que estimularon asesinar a Isaac Rabin, así como el asesinato masivo de palestinos en Hebrón a cargo de Baruch Goldstein. Otra cosa que destaco también es hoy hay un terrorismo judío en Cisjordania, y que el ejército colabora con los colonos y las milicias judías. Y por último, pocos son culpables de la situación, pero muchos somos responsables y algo tenemos que hacer con esto, ¿no? Quiero resaltar una cosa que sale en el vídeo que hemos presentado de Rabbi Moshe, que es en un momento un fragmento de una entrevista que se hace a un colono que dice que lamenta mucho el ataque, pero dice que estos rabinos que ayudan a los palestinos son judíos que se odian a sí mismos. Este argumento, la verdad, lo oímos mucho cuando criticamos a Israel, lo oímos mucho que no estamos comprometidos con lo judío. Yo siento que es precisamente lo contrario. Es el compromiso con lo judío lo que nos hace criticar a Israel. Y yo no tengo nada más que decir. No sé si es correcto todo lo que he dicho, si Rabbi Nava estaba de acuerdo con lo que he dicho de resumen o no.
What I said is that 99% of the Israelis have never been in the West Bank. So all they know about the West Bank is what they see on the TV. And what they see on TV is already manipulated. So they really don't have a clue about what's going on in the West Bank.
Ya. No, es lamentable porque todos son guerras de propaganda en el fondo. Es terrible y tenemos que hacer mucho este esfuerzo de contrapropaganda, ¿no? Bueno, no, si alguien quiere decir algo más, Steven, Nava, cualquier persona de la audiencia, si quiere decir algo, porque vamos a acabar, ya son las 7 menos 20, perdón, 8 menos 20 en Israel. Y ya
sí me quiere decir algo.
Ah, muy bien.
Bueno, antes
I
que
just
nada,
want to finish with a prayer. A short prayer.
¿Se oye? A ver, antes que nada, gracias a los organizadores de la charla. Me ha parecido muy interesante. Yo tengo profundas discrepancias con algunas de las cosas que ha comentado Nava, Rabina, sobre todo en el orden, en el estatus jurídico que tienen los territorios, porque tengo entendido de que no hay un estatus claro como de que sean territorios ocupados, pero eso es aparte porque no tiene ninguna importancia. La importancia que aquí hay que resaltar es la de la población civil en un lado y en el otro. O sea, claro, a resultas de ser ocupados o no ser ocupados o o tener un estatus de como reconoce la ONU de territorios en disputas, allí se crea una situación en la que hay cerca de 400.000 colonos judíos en el cinturón de Jerusalén. Mi pregunta es muy simple. Solo hay dos maneras. O se acepta la posición palestina a la hora de crear un Estado palestino y se los evacúa a todos, o se acepta la posición de alguna de las partes que propone Israel, en la que a ciertos territorios, un 14, un 15% en torno a Jerusalén, se anexiona y se le da nacionalidad a los palestinos que viven en esos territorios. Yo le pregunto a la rabina Nava qué opina ella de este tema. Gracias.
Okay, so let me first of all correct a little bit. According to the Israeli law, the territories are under military control. This is the official. Now, when I'm talking about occupation, it's not about land. It's not only, it's about people. It's about controlling, occupying people. I'm not a politician. I'm not in the Knesset. But I'm dealing with human rights. And according to my Jewish tradition, what we are doing there is in opposite, totally opposite of what our tradition is commanding us to do, to treat the other. The issue of the territories, it's not only around Jerusalem. Around Jerusalem, you don't have so many settlements. The problem of and it's not only all the settlements. And it's not me to decide whether we are going to evacuate or not evacuate. I'm not a decision maker. What my vocation, my work is to see that the people that are living there will get all their human rights. This is my task. This is my goal. Okay? So I'm not the one to say whether we're going to evacuate or not. This is for the politicians to decide. When they built a wall around Jerusalem, the problem of the wall was that it was decided only by Israel. It's against the Jewish law. According to the Jewish law, when you want to build a fence or a wall with your neighbor, there are rules how you do it. And you cannot decide that you evacuated the settlements in Gaza. Do you think that we don't control Gaza? We control everything in Gaza, everything. But again, we have only 1 hour here, okay? And I cannot go and bring documents and bring you texts, okay? So don't believe any word I said tonight. Come and see, come and learn, because knowledge is power. And right now I have the knowledge. So I have the power. So I invite you to come and to see by your own eyes, okay, what is going on in the West Bank.
Muy bien. Os doy muchas gracias a todos por vuestra asistencia. Gracias especialmente a Rabbi Nava, a Rabbi Moshe y a Rabbi Stephen por tan entregada participación.
Toda Rabá, Rabina, Rab, toda Rabá a todos. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a todos.
Y buena semana.
Shalom a todos.
Shalom, Shavuot Tov.
Shalom.
Shavuot Tov.
Merci
Bye.
beaucoup, Rabbi Nava.